Well, happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, October the 29th, the 303rd day of the year. There are 63 days left in the year 2024, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Tom. We're 2 days away from Halloween and 1 week away from Election Day, and there's quite a bit of excitement about Halloween and Election Day. Halloween ghosts and goblins are hanging out throughout the neighborhood. Halloween has become a major evening of tricking and treating, with children running throughout the neighborhood and collecting goodies. In the neighborhood, the children come in cars with their parents and trailers by the dozens, and some just get dropped off at the beginning of the street to wander around. This year, the children will have to compete with Election Day. Signs detailing which candidates the respective household is supporting are throughout the neighborhood. In the presidential race, people move their signs closer to their homes so others who disagree with their choice won't either move the signs or destroy them because they support someone else. Guess who? Like we've said here on TWT, vote. It's important that you vote. It's your privilege. It should be a heck of a weekend. Our G-list guest today is Kynesha Brown. Kynesha Brown has been with us before. She has worked and volunteered as a volunteer organizer, field organizer, and strategist with several local, state, and national political campaigns, including for Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Doug Jones, Stephen Reed, the city of Montgomery's first Black mayor. As a graduate of the Women's Campaign School at Yale University, she is very passionate about activism, voting empowerment, engagement, and restoring voting rights for those impacted by felonies. We look forward to that discussion. Our show today, of course, is sponsored by the Best Girl Consulting Firm, so let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl customizes the solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards, how are you this morning? I heard you had a long weekend.
Good morning, Tom. I'm doing better today. Yes, I did have a very, very long weekend. As I think I mentioned last week that this was Magic City Classic week, and it's no longer just a weekend. It's a week-long activities going on in the city of Birmingham, and it was a busy week, and so I got a chance to see a lot of people I hadn't seen in quite some time. It's like a big family reunion, a big class reunion, really. You get a chance. I saw people from high school and the city of Mobile and family members that I didn't get a chance to see. They didn't get a chance to come to the family reunion this year, so they come to the Magic City Classic, so I got a chance to see them there. Saturday alone, it was hot out there, first of all, Saturday for the game and all the festivities. So I think it must have gotten up to 100 degrees. It felt like it anyway. Wow. And I got in over 22,000 steps on Saturday. So it was busy. And I didn't even make it inside the stadium for the game.
Well, I was going to say, when you ask people about the Magic City Classic, they tell you about everything but the game.
I had to watch TV to find out.
Food, they tell you about the band. They tell you about this, that, and the other.
The food was wonderful. The people were wonderful, other than it being hot, but at least it wasn't raining. So, thankful for that. But it was a busy, busy weekend, and I had a wonderful time, from concerts to luncheons to banquets to receptions to dinners to parties and tailgating.
Well, just for some clarification, who won the game?
Who won the game? Alabama State actually won the game. I had to watch TV to find out, but Alabama State won the game.
Okay.
And you can
Hey,
see
Michael Walker, how was your
stayed,
weekend?
I stayed through. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
Go,
Finish, Barbara. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to
go
say
ahead
I
and finish,
stayed
Barbara.
through. I stayed through halftime at the stadium, and you could see people piling out of the stadium after halftime. Like over half of the people left the stadium after
It's too
halftime.
hot.
Came back out. It was hot out there. It was very hot. So people just piled out of the stadium and came back out, started tailgating and partying, and there was vendors along the street. People out there shopping. So it was a good time to be had by all.
So, Michael, Auburn won this weekend. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm happy that they won. I can imagine how the players have put forth their best efforts, and for one reason or another, things have just not come together. I was happy to see them win. I think that the success was the fact that Auburn got to doing what Auburn does best, which is running the ball and punishing the other team. It was this game that they gave Travis Hunter the ball. I mean, Jarquez Hunter, they gave him the ball this time. He had 23 carries, which is a career high for him.
Wow.
And he rushed for 289 yards or something like that. So that was a good game for him. And it came out that, ironically, after the loss to Missouri, Travis Hunter sent the head coach and the coaches and said he took the blame for losing in Missouri, and that
Jarquez,
he
you mean
was going
Jarquez?
to put forth a better effort against Kentucky, and basically saying, give me the ball. That's the underlying word and
And you
verbiage
don't
of it.
mean Travis Hunter.
You meant Jarquez.
Jarquez
Yeah.
Hunter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hunter
well, good. So they
said,
listened to him then.
yeah.
Well, but they're being paid millions of dollars to make the decisions. Why? I mean, they know he's on the team. They know how good he is. Why haven't they given him the ball before this past weekend? I do not understand that.
Well, my humble opinion is that it was all set up to make Peyton Thorne look like he was the man. You know, if you look at those games that we lost, it was Thorne making all these decisions to throw these balls and stuff. And he started out the Kentucky game just like he started out all the other games. He threw an interception right off the get-go,
No.
and
Wow.
within 2 minutes, Auburn was down 10-0. And but the defense played very well. The defense has been consistently getting better and better.
Yes.
They played very well, and like I said, the running game was on point. And they used Jarquez Hunter and Austin
Right.
and Jeremiah Cobb. And when they started to run the ball effectively, that opened things up so that Peyton Thorne could throw the ball, but he didn't throw it that many times.
Right.
But
Which
he
is a good
was
thing.
able to complete passes because he wasn't under duress. To me, they tried to make him seem like he was a Cam Newton or a Jared Stidham or Nick Marshall. He just doesn't have that skill set to lift the whole team.
Right. But again, that's my point. If the coaches wanted to win, and I would assume they wanted to win, that has been the recipe for winning the whole season. Give the ball to the running backs, to the fullbacks more, and let them run the ball, not rely on Thorne, who is not a Jared Stidham or a Cam Newton or Nick Marshall. He never will be.
He's not even a Bo Nix.
No, he's not. He's not at all.
No, I don't think he's close to a Bo Nix.
No.
I don't know. I don't know. I still wonder why we went and got this guy at the transfer portal.
Yeah, you're right.
What he did in the past to impress some people, I don't know.
I have no idea. He was going to lose his job at Michigan State anyway when they went and got him.
Right.
So, but hey, that's what they get paid
there's
for.
something. There must be something that we don't know about. So we'll leave it at that, I guess.
I think the defense is playing good ball.
Yes.
And, I don't think you can no longer blame the wide receivers and even the offensive line. I mean,
Right.
kids are playing really hard and they want to win. It
they
takes
made
a lot
to the offensive
to play.
line. They made some changes to the offensive line. they inserted, I guess he's probably a redshirt freshman now, a guy that played at Auburn High School. They moved him into left guard, guy by the last name of Joyner, and shuffled a couple other people in different positions. And this was their best outing thus far.
Well,
Okay, good.
we have Vandy coming up, so that should be a
Vandy's been playing good. Ball. You know, Vandy was always good for about 2.5 quarters.
right.
And then Alabama's and the Tennessees would spank them.
Right.
But they're playing good ball now.
Didn't they almost beat? Was it Texas? Was it Texas they played this past weekend? Or
Yeah, and they lost by 3 points, and they
right.
very well could have won that game.
Wow, that says a lot about their team. They've come a long way.
Well, they have a quarterback.
Yes.
It's the quarterback that played with New Mexico last year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
That's right.
And so he's the one there, and plus the head coach from last year is there calling the plays. So that makes a difference, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think if you don't have a quarterback, it's hard to win in the way the game's being played today.
Right.
You know, back when Nick Saban got there, I mean, Alabama could win the games with manager quarterbacks
Mhm.
back then because they were so strong everywhere else. It's hard to do that now. You've got to have a good athlete at quarterback.
Right. And Alabama came back and played really well this past weekend, didn't they? It was their homecoming. I think they played Missouri.
Yeah.
And
they did.
I don't think Missouri scored at all, did they, Michael? Did you watch the
they
game?
didn't score, you know, but they got a break because the quarterback from Missouri, he really got hurt in the Auburn game because if you recall, he went out.
Right.
And then he came back in the last minute to win the game for them.
Mhm.
And during the Bama game, he re-injured himself and he went out just before halftime and didn't play anymore. So
Oh, wow.
that took away everything they had.
Okay. Michael, you got anything else? Barbara, you got anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple things. Yeah, I have something. It's a sad story, but it's also a story that is applicable to today. Minneapolis police say they failed a black man allegedly shot by a white neighbor. This happened last week. There was an attack on 34-year-old Davis Moultrie this past Wednesday as he performed yard work in his own yard. His neighbor shot him from an upstairs window and left him with a fractured spine, 2 broken ribs, and a concussion. The thing about it is, ever since Moultrie and his wife moved into the neighborhood in 2023, they had registered over 19 complaints of racial harassments and threats that were leveled at them from this neighbor. And the police failed to act on it. Now, they say that they had tried to go out and arrest him, but he was able to evade them. And the gentleman was pruning a tree that was on his property line in his yard. Supposedly, this is a tree that the neighbor and his mom planted, but it was like on the property line. So half of it was hanging over on the other side. So he shot him for doing that work. Now, as always, they're saying that this guy he was known to have mental issues and to have guns. So now every time that there's a shooting somewhere, they say that the person had mental illness. Well, now this was known that this guy had mental illness and had guns, but they never did anything about it. Now this poor fella is in the hospital with neck brace and all kinds of stuff, and he talked about, obviously, the phone calls he made didn't make any difference in the complaints.
Wow.
So where is it now? What's going to happen?
Well, the guy had finally got arrested. He didn't get arrested until Monday. Now, all this happened on Wednesday.
Wow.
So they just arrested him yesterday. And so he's being charged with attempted murder, felony harassment, stalking, and prosecutors are explicitly accusing him of racism.
They should. That is sad. Really is a sad story.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys, do you think that Harris is subjected to a double standard in this election?
Most definitely.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Most
Yeah.
definitely. As someone was stating this past weekend, she has to be flawless, and her opponent is lawless. There's definitely a
Well,
double
they're
standard there.
demanding that she answer policy questions, but they're not demanding that of the other candidate.
Right.
He gets to get up there and talk about Puerto Rico and talk about all kinds of other dumb shit. And so yeah, it's definitely a double standard.
Right. That rally they had this past weekend in Madison Square Garden, that was nothing but a KKK meeting. I watched some highlights of that, and it was ridiculous, shameful even. I mean, I have never seen anything like that in my life. And there was mention of there was a rally similar to that in, I think, 1939, also held at Madison Square Garden, and it was a KKK rally. And that's what this reminded me of. To have people over there talking about Puerto Rico and blacks and Latinos and basically every ethnic group there was other than themselves, they had something negative to say about them. And all of the, Trump can't say that he didn't know they were going to say that, because all of that had to be approved in advance. They knew what was going to be said, and he didn't get up there and disagree with any of it. All those people came on and talked before he did, and he came up and didn't disagree with anything they said. So that, to me, that means he approved of it.
He didn't denounce it. It's interesting. Two things I'll make. I would agree with you about the double standard. One of the reasons why Harris is made to answer a question about her policies and stuff is because she's put one out. Trump doesn't put one out, so it's nothing to ask him about it. So he gets the
concept.
Yeah, he got a concept of a plan. Yeah, so they can ask him about that concept of a plan he has, Michael. They should be.
No, I
don't think
agree
he has a
Michael.
concept of the plan. But
go ahead.
What I was going to say, what's interesting is that there was a survey done where they took Harris's agenda and her proposal, Trump's agenda and proposal.
Oh, yeah.
They sent them out without their names attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the results came back that more people identified and supported Harris's proposals than Trump, but they thought it was the opposite way.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So Trump gets credit for being tough on this or being that, but it's not really the truth. But people are not really looking deep into that to see what's going on. And if you take the time to look at the agendas, you'll see that hers is probably better for America. It's more mainstream. Right.
But Michael, why do you feel like people are not looking into it? Again, this is their country. This is their families. And why wouldn't they look into the values of each of those candidates and make a decision based on that rather than just sticking with the party?
Well, I think it's probably easy to just believe the talking points and listen, sound bites and stuff like that. Trump get attention for supposedly being tough and all of this. But what I find so interesting is going back to the comment that the comedian made about Puerto Rico and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
They asked a Trump supporter who happened to be an African-American male. And he said, well, Trump didn't say it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that tells you everything you need to know about the Trump supporters. Now, if that had
like
been
you
the
said,
other way around,
right,
and somebody did that at a Harris rally, they would have blamed her for it.
Absolutely.
But for this guy to say, well, Trump didn't say it, but yet and still now they want to blame Harris for the poor policies that Biden put forth. They're saying, well, she did it. She was there as vice president and she didn't do anything. Everybody knows as vice president, your main priority there is to support the president.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
with their policy decisions and what have you. You're not to upstage him and break away because you committed to the party platform and to their
Absolutely.
agenda.
Absolutely.
Even if he's talking about eating dogs and cats, you're supposed to agree with it, right?
Yeah, except for this is all right because they made that up, you know.
I just don't understand how people who call themselves Christians can support a candidate like that, because there's nothing Christ-like about him, nothing at all. And they keep wanting to say he has morals and he has values, and I'm trying to find out where they are, because he hasn't displayed any of those in these throughout this candidacy at all, or through his presidency even. I just don't. I don't understand how anyone who really believes in the Christian values and morals can support a candidate like Trump.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'd go for the simple answer: racism and sexism. She's a woman, and it's very difficult for some men in particular to support a woman. And there's just still a lot of racism in this country, man. And I mean, people can say, well, you shouldn't say that. Well, we shouldn't say a lot of things that are being said.
Right.
You just mentioned that.
Right.
But we'll see.
But they say racism doesn't exist any longer. Yeah.
Tom, both of you guys bring up a good point. I'd like to ask you guys this. Do you think this race between Harris and Trump is coming down to genders versus gender? Because Harris is totally blowing him away when it comes to the female vote, whether that's white females, black females, or what have you. Trump, on the other hand, is doing a great job of beating her when it comes to the male vote. But then there's another part of it that says a lot of Harris support comes from educated people, both black and white. A lot of Trump support comes from uneducated people, and particularly white males that are uneducated. And it looks like that's where we are in this election cycle. And that probably has a lot to do with the reason why Trump is able to get away without having specifics about his plan and what have you.
Because it's the uneducated.
I'll tell you this: in our neighborhood, when Trump ran before, there were Trump signs everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There are Trump signs, but they're not nearly as many. They're every, maybe on the block there are like 4 of them, whereas in the past they were in every house except ours.
Right.
And I think that there are people who will probably vote for him, but they're not going to put their signs out there. They're not going to. It's just a different thing. And then I think the thing about the setting the drop boxes on fire up in Washington and Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that both candidates would denounce that.
Right.
But that ain't gonna happen. And if you had to guess whose supporters did it, you'd probably guess Trump, and you'd probably be right.
Right.
So I don't know. I just we're still fussing about people who come into this country, and God Almighty, what if they're qualified, if they do what they're supposed to do, and so on and so forth, what is the issue? And he says they're taking over the country and blah 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 blah, and people go for that, man. I don't know. We're in a crazy time.
Yes, we are.
Anything else? All right. Well, let's move on. And I don't know if Sean's not here. I don't know if we got a minute or not. Nobody told me. So do we have a?
Good morning to everyone joining in with us. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. It's Tuesday, October 29th, and here on Got a Minute, you know we love Muhammad Ali. And on this day in 1974, a 32-year-old Muhammad Ali became the heavyweight champion of the world for the second time when he knocked out 25-year-old champ George Foreman in the 8th round of Rumble in the Jungle. 7 years before, Ali had lost his title when the government accused him of draft dodging, and the Boxing Commission took away his license. His victory in Zaire made him only the second dethroned champ in history to regain his belt. He passed away in 2016. Meanwhile, Foreman retired in 1977 but kept training, and in 1987, he became the oldest heavyweight champ in the history of boxing. Today, Foreman is a minister and a rancher in Texas and the father of 5 daughters and 5 sons, all named George. He's also the spokesman for the incredibly popular line of George Foreman indoor grills. Now, before I go, next Tuesday is Election Day. Go out and vote. Vote, vote, vote. I don't care how you vote, as long as you vote. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
Yeah, I remember that Rumble in the Jungle. It was great, man. That was something special, you know. And I think Don King was the promoter, and they went to Zaire, Africa, and had to fight, and it was incredibly special. So. Anyway, let's move on. Hollywood has the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G list, and our G list guest today is Kynesha Brown. Kynesha is a repeat guest with us on TWT. She was here a short time ago to talk about the election, and she's back as election day draws near. She has worked and volunteered as a volunteer organizer, field organizer, and a strategist for several campaigns throughout the country and the state of Alabama. As a graduate of the Women's Campaign School at Yale, she's very passionate about activism, voter empowerment, engagement, and restoring voting rights for those impacted by felonies. She also implemented the Rolling to the Polls Voting Initiative, RTTP. Under the Rolling to the Polls Voting Initiative, coalition groups are galvanized to target marginalized neighborhoods to help increase voter turnout. So let's bring Kynesha on and see what's going on today. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm good. I can't complain. Thank you for having me again on the show.
Well, thank you for being with us. So give us the latest. What you got? What's the latest scoop?
Well, I say this much. In literally 7 days to the day, we'll know who we'll have as president of the United States. I think the last time I was on a call, I think we were kind of like a month or 2 months out, and we blink and election day is right at our door. But I will say emotions have been high on both sides. We were talking about the presidential election, and it's really, high stakes, to the point where a lot of misinformation has been spreaded through social media. And it recently came out that there was infiltration from Russia to purposely put things on social media to spread misinformation. I'm not sure if y'all been following the news, but there was a viral moment that happened. It started on Twitter, X, formerly Twitter, where a person who proclaimed that he was a student of Tim Walz and Tim Walz sexually assaulted him. That came out to be true. The person who said it was impersonating a student that was under Tim Walz. And it later came out that it was Moscow, Russia, that were responsible for putting that information out. So there's a lot of things that are kind of happening to really try to deter people from voting. And I mean, we've seen what recently happened in New York and Madison Square Garden, the rhetoric that has been said there from that, that particular side. So it's getting nasty from a presidential standpoint. From a local standpoint in Alabama, we do have some very important elections that are happening. Of course, every election is important. But with me living in Montgomery, one of what is a high profile race for me is the congressional second district. That will be able to possibly have a first time Democrat black man representing us in Congress, contingent on what the outcome will be on November 5th. So it's a lot of things to navigate through. That's kind of the things that are going on in a nutshell. But to not sound redundant and cliche, like we really just need people to like get out and vote by any means necessary. One person who I grew up looking up to, Representative Alvin Holmes, when he used to try to motivate people to go out to vote, he said, "Hey, we need people to come out in the thousands to go vote. We need people more in the thousands to go vote on Tuesday." So it's very crucial.
I remember Alvin Holmes. He was always out there, and he was always, shall I put it nicely and say, pissing people off.
Yeah, he was very outspoken. Very outspoken.
He advocated for, but he upset the status quo. Let me put it that way.
Yes.
And, okay, Barbara, you got a question?
I do. Thank you for being with us again this morning, Kynesha. But in the Rolling to the Polls initiatives that you're doing and being out in the communities, are you getting any pushback from the citizens that you're coming in contact with about voting, or what are they saying as you're coming in contact with them?
Well, mostly, and to kind of talk about what we do with Rolling to the Polls. Rolling to the Polls, we started this actually back in 2016. Which started kind of as just a voter registration effort, turned into something more as we started going out into neighborhoods and having conversations with people. Going to the name of our organization, we transport people to the polls on election day because to some, transportation is considered a luxury. Not everyone has means of transportation to simply go vote. So we provide those things and also help people getting their voting rights restored if they've been convicted of a felony. But to your question, in terms of conversations, most of the conversations have been, good-hearted. Of course, you're going to come across some people who are apathetic to voting, and that's simply because, they get a little disgruntled because, of course, of the election time, you have people who come around, kiss babies, come in your churches, asking for your vote and talk about the things that they're going to fix once they're elected, and those people get elected and the community never sees them anymore. Or they never address the issues that they said they will help once they're elected. So it's a little apathy there. I will say in terms of like the youth vote, I think there's a misunderstanding when we're talking about young people voting. The narrative has been, young people don't care. They don't want to vote. In our conversations, I would say, of course, you're going to have some that, are disengaged from voting, but their issues are different. What I tell people all the time, if you're talking about Gen Z and also Gen Alpha can't really vote yet. They're still in middle school, early part of high school, but like Gen Z, if you think about it, they grew up pretty much in chaos since birth. I think my big traumatic moment that I really remember was my senior year in high school, which was Columbine. My sophomore year in college was 9/11. So, those were two significant things. But when you think about Gen Z, they have grown up through active shooter drills in school.
Right.
Things like that, and seeing mass shootings happen all the time. They're seeing war in real time. So they're a little desensitized. They see things a certain way.
Right.
And they're kind of more in structure of both sides. I'm seeing the same outcomes. So you kind of have to show me a little bit more that you're trying to help humanity. It's not that they don't want to vote. It's just like they see it a little bit differently. They're just like engaged a different way. Whereas to me, I'm an 80s baby. I'm kind of on the cusp. I was born in 1980. So I see, like, I have different issues that somebody young or somebody older than me would have. So in our conversations, it's just more so first of us listening to what issues they have and then kind of making it relational to make sure that they're engaged to vote. What we've done, we spread it, we put out information about the election, fighting that disinformation that's out there. A lot of the conversations that we've heard, we had some people that were still kind of holding on to those stimulus checks that happened 6 or 7 years ago.
Right.
You know, they was like, well, you know, such and such gave us those stimulus checks, so I'm riding with them. I'm like, if you kind of break that down over the year span, that was only 75 cents a day.
Right.
And that really did not come from the president. That really came from your Congress.
That's
The
absolutely.
president at that time actually fought tooth and nail not to even push it through until he actually had his name on the checks. So it's just, you know, fighting that, you know, misinformation and just telling people and making sure that they understand that they do have a voice in the process. And elections can be determined sometimes by 1 or 2 votes. Being in Montgomery, a city council election was determined by 2 votes. So, you know, just imagine what can be done if, you know, everybody is engaged to vote.
Absolutely.
You
Thank
say you say the city council vote was decided by 2 votes. If you look at it carefully, your local elections are as important, sometimes more important, than the national election.
Right.
Who's responsible for your garbage pickup? Who's responsible for the local tax situation and so on and so forth? That's really what matters in a lot of issues. And I know that from my wife's experience being on the city council here.
Yes.
But I will say this, and I don't know, but we talk about the younger people and their issues and so on and so forth. Man, we saw that. I was in the 6th grade. The president of the United States got shot in the head and killed. Now, if that doesn't do anything for you, then something's wrong with you. And right after that, Martin Luther King was killed.
Right.
And within 3-4 months, Robert Kennedy was killed. So maybe we have something that they don't have in terms of knowing what we should be trying to do, and so on and so forth. But I don't know, man. I just can't go for the kids. One young person, this guy was 40 years old, told me, I don't like either one of them. I ain't gonna vote for either one of them. Okay, well, that's your red wagon, and so don't come telling me you know who did what to you when you won't even go out and cast your vote.
Right. And like I said, you're not going to get everybody to go vote, right?
No.
The goal is to make sure that we get as many people who can make good, sound decisions to go to the voting booth. And like always going back to 2016, even when people ask me personally how I feel about next Tuesday, how you think it's going to go, I always say I'm just having a pragmatic approach. And if it doesn't go the way that I hope it goes, it wouldn't be because we didn't put as much effort as possible to doing that. And the reason why I say that is because I always go back to what happened in 2016. Polls, everything was always going in favor of Hillary Clinton. Everybody said the exit numbers and everything was going in favor of Hillary Clinton. We did our first operation remote to the polls that day, transporting people to the polls. After we finished, I was tired. I was like, congratulations, we got a woman president. I'm going to bed. I woke up at probably 3:30 that morning, you know, just to get on the news to see if I can catch the victory speech or something like that. And it went totally the opposite way.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure everybody know how they felt that day after because no one really was expecting it. But when you go back and look at the numbers of the breakdown of those numbers, that some young people did not vote in 2016. But it was 42.3% of people total that did not vote in that election. 42.3 was not just young people. It was
Right.
people who were kind of my age, people that were older. It was just it was a large demographic of people that didn't vote. And it was different dynamics with that. Some didn't care for either candidate. That was one. Some people thought that she had it in the bag. So they was like, oh, I don't need to go vote anyway because she good. It was just different things. But we just have to make sure that we're just having those conversations like, look, you may not be 100% in for this particular candidate or 100% in with this other particular candidate, but where do your issues lie, and compare them to the policies that these candidates have. And I'm trying to kind of keep it as nonpartisan as possible because Rose of the Post is nonpartisan. But if you look and break down the policy, and this is the conversation that we have at the door with people, one does not have, a plan or policy. They have a concept of something they'll probably do once they get in
I
office.
like that.
Whereas one has talked about their policies, understanding, another thing that we've heard at the door too was like, well, the vice president do anything while she's in office now, what makes her think? You got to understand first the role of a vice president.
Yes.
Joe Biden as vice president do anything? I can't even think of
Pence.
Pence
Right.
did not do anything as vice
Right.
president. Nobody changed. None of them as vice president had a sole role to make decisions. Even with the president position, they really only have power to sign or veto things that are passed by the Congress and Senate. A
Right.
lot of our things are done from Congress and Senate. So just making sure that those things are kind of understood. And once people kind of understand that, they have a better concept with that. And then with local elections, not saying that presidential elections aren't important, but as you said, Mr. Gossam, our local elections are the ones that are going to directly impact us moving forward. Those are the things that happen to us every day. And while we're talking about this November 5th election, that's next Tuesday, next year, 2025, pretty much all of Alabama municipalities will have elections with about, give or take, 20 plus municipalities in the state. So 2025 will be that local election turnout where we get people on the local level. And then 26, it goes to everybody: governor, attorney general, public service commission, who's responsible for regulating our utility rates. We've seen how our light bills has been, our power bills has been on the summer. Those are the things that are going to be determined in 2026. So the trajectory of what we see come out next Tuesday will also set the pace for those local elections and those elections that happen in 2026 as well. So I do understand that we do have people that just are not engaged about voting, that don't care about voting. I understand that. It's like, you just kind of look at them. I can't be defensive about it because they, sometimes they have a valid reason for not voting. And the hard thing that I had to learn over time was it's your right to vote, but it's also your right to not vote. But instead of like going back and forth with them about why they're not voting, I'm gonna go and talk to the person who's a little wavering and needs to understand more to get them to the polls. Sometimes you have a better leeway with that.
I think you have older people with a different point of view because of how hard it was for them to get the opportunity.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
How they were kept from being involved in different.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
The fact that I still have my mother's poll tax receipt.
Yeah.
Is one of the reasons why I was like, I have to vote. Unless I just physically not able to, which still I'm going to try my best to get an absentee ballot.
And that's very generational. Just like you said earlier, Mr. Gossam, in 6th grade, you said you witnessed the president at that time get shot in the head. My grandmother, who is no longer living, God rest her soul, her and her family are from Lowndes County, Haynesville area. So if you're not familiar with that sits between Selma in Montgomery. And all those years growing up, I heard of the different stories, some not even in the history books, of what they endured during that time. And when my grandmother was living, she suffered from emphysema. So she always had to walk around with an oxygen mask and an oxygen tank. You better believe every election day she was going to be ready to go. She probably couldn't drive at the moment. She going to call either me or my aunt or my mom to make sure she go vote. And even when we're transporting people to the polls on election day, those older people, those are the ones who are going to call us like at 5:30 in that morning, 4:00 in that morning, say, hey, I'm going to be ready at 9:00. Or we have our standards come and say, hey, let me put on my makeup. These are the ones that get dressed up to go vote. They put on their hosiery and their lipstick or whatever to go vote.
Yes.
I call them our legacy voters. Like those
Mhm.
are the people, no matter what, rain, sleet, or snow, it could be 150-degree weather outside, they're going to be the ones to vote. And I love them so much for that. And then, with my generation, as I get older, I'm 43 years old now. Our generation, we're homeowners, we're entrepreneurs, we're business people. So we care about those things that matter to us. So we're more inclined to vote. Younger people, like I said, some of them, they have to see more. It's a little more tugging and pulling to get them to vote. But looking at the numbers I've seen with voter registration among young people lately, and not only just in Alabama, just kind of across the nation, I really think that you'll be impressed. And I will buy you a meal from Niffers, Mr. Gossam. I think you will be impressed by the turnout of the young people next Tuesday.
Good. Good.
Is there a division between young college educated people and non-educated people? Is there a division there?
Yeah. And I would say it's not really a young, old, educated, non-educated. I think it is a divide between those that are more college educated and non-educated. And that's not a knock to either demographic. It's just the messaging gets translated differently for those. And what I've noticed in some places, and I'm not even saying Alabama as a whole, but in some places, especially like rural areas and things like that, they gravitate more to the conservative side than the Democratic side. And it's just because they hear messaging and rhetoric that even though it would hurt them, it would impact them negatively if these policies are put in place, but they feel like, it's not gonna bother them. But I always think about a quote that Lyndon B. Johnson said, in terms of like, if you allow the poorest white man to think that he's better than the most powerful colored man, they won't see you picking out their pocket. Hell, they'll oftentimes give you money out of the pocket to give to you if it gives them some kind of leverage over a person of color, a colored person. So it's just more so how that messaging is being translated to them. But yes, hearing different conversations, it is a distinct understanding of that too. And then it's also because of some things that you see on social media that are being put out that has really no truth to it, whatever. People are just kind of running with it. We saw that during the presidential debate where Trump talked about eating cats and dogs and how that negatively impacted people in Springfield, Ohio, and even in our backyard in Alabama, in Sylacauga and down in Baldwin County, where you had people going to their city council meetings trying to take over because the fear of Haitian immigrants. And if you would have heard some of the discussions that were happening, you would have thought that Haitian immigrants was coming in by the thousands and things like that. And I think it later came out that Sylacauga only had 60 Haitian immigrants who had been put in they're naturalized citizens now. So it's just like that fear mongering that's going on right now that's really, really causing a lot of that pushback.
I like your statement that the message gets translated differently, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. It's interesting. Michael, Barbara, you got any questions?
Michael, I'd let you go.
Okay. Thanks for being here, Kynesha. Let me ask you, a lot of the messaging, and going back to what you're saying, even on television, they're not truthful ads. And what people do not understand is that the television stations, the broadcasting stations, they are not bound by law or anything to regulate that message.
Right.
So do you feel like there needs to be some type of change in that? Or how do we get to a point where the information that's getting out is not filtered. Because to me, it causes more harm than good. I know they operate under the freedom of free speech, but you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire because then that's a crime.
Right.
So why are we able to get on television during an election and just make bold-faced lies about an important issue like that?
And you're right. A lot of it is not being regulated, and a lot of it is coming from those who actually work in media. My professional background is in communications and in public relations. And even with this election, I've always tell people, don't pay attention to the media that's biased. As much as we love CNN and MSNBC, I tell people, if you want to get news, don't go to MSNBC or CNN. MSNBC and CNN are just like Fox News. They cater to a certain base, and although they do factual reporting, it's going to have a spin to it to cater to that particular base. What I normally tell people, if you want to get just factual news without any commentary or anything like that, go to C-SPAN, NPR, Associated Press for just that cut and dry news reporting. And I keep bringing up social media, and the reason why I keep doubling down on that, because that's where I see it most. As I mentioned earlier about the Russian influence that has been going on social media, that the FBI had to kind of track to call out to say this was falsified. There has been no regulation to say that this is artificial intelligence or anything that's filtering with that. So there needs to be better regulations on that. And I tell people all the time, social media really isn't the best place to get your news either. I don't know how many times on Facebook we see a celebrity that has passed away and that's going viral, and that celebrity is live and kicking. And that just came from a viral post that somebody started sharing and sharing and sharing and sharing to where people believe it. And it's to the point also now that people are not really going to news sites for their news, things like that. They're going to like gossip columns like TMZ and New York Post and things like that to get things. So it's very hard to navigate that. And I wish it was ways that we could have better regulations with that. I will say, if a particular candidate does get in office, it's going to become harder, because if Project 2025 goes into place, those regulations that we currently have with FCC and media will be removed, to where we won't have much regulation with that. So it's going to be very hard to regulate that if we do have a certain person that get into office. But yet it's very hard to navigate that. And I just tell people, just try to pay attention to the details of what's being reported and what's being put out. If it sounds off, 9 times out of 10, it is off. And I tell people all the time, Google really is your good friend to find fact-based information to see if things are true or not. And I also tell people to check out Snopes.com because that's a very good, accurate fact checker for people to use to see if things are true or false too.
What is that again?
Snopes, SNOPES.com. I use it a lot of times with some people I know. They was like, well, have you heard this? I was like, it's not true. Go to Snopes. Notes are disputed. So
Right.
Okay, Barbara, Michael.
Yes, Kynesha, you mentioned Project 2025 again, and I think that's very important to talk about as well. I know we don't have a lot of time, but can you briefly talk about that? And is there another document? I think the Project 2025 is some MAGA Republicans who have put together that document. Is there something that the Democratic Party is putting together, or people that are more mainstream have another plan out there that will counteract Project 2025?
Now I will say I personally have not seen anything that the Democrats have put out in terms of like a document wise that has served as a counter or anything similar to Project 2025. What I've seen is that a lot of them are going around refuting the positioning that is in Project 2025, and also telling people how dangerous it is.
Right.
But just to do like a short synopsis of what Project 2025 is, and as I mentioned it on the last call, is a 922-page document, 5 sections, 30 chapters, that really just provides a blueprint of what could be done if it becomes to where we have a conservative, or I'm not going to say conservative. I'm going to say far right,
Yeah.
representation.
For wrong. Let's make it for wrong.
That far point.
Yes.
Because I mean, some conservative people are very, level-headed and moderate and things like that. So I don't want to discredit them. But if we do have like far right, very far wrong, as you said, in position, it will really dismantle some things that are very important to communities that look like us, especially our children. One of the things they're talking about doing is getting rid of Head Start, and Title I programs, and also eliminating the Department of Education, and the regulations that I just mentioned to Mr. Walker in terms of our media and journalistic reporting and things like that. So it's something that should not be taken lightly. I know that the candidate tried to separate himself from Project 2025, but if you look at who has compiled the information for Project 2025, it's consisted of a lot of his former administration when he was president, and a lot of organizations that are currently backing his campaign, such as the Heritage Foundation and Moms for Liberty. So, when people show me who they are, I tend to believe them. Say what you want, but the research and the receipts, as the young people say, prove otherwise.
Thank you.
Well, anything else?
One quick question. Give me your position on Elon Musk paying people to vote. I noticed yesterday, Philadelphia DA, they filed suit against him saying that's illegal to do a lottery like that, but he's been giving away $1 million for people to come vote a certain way.
And that's what we call actually electioneering. And it's pretty egregious in my opinion, especially if you think about what happened in Georgia. After Georgia had flipped a couple of Senate seats, and the following year, the legislator there made it illegal to give someone a bottle of water for standing in line to vote. So, you can't applaud or not put any regulations on what Elon Musk is doing. To me, you're buying votes. If somebody like us was doing that, if we had a fish fry giving away plates of fish to someone for registering to vote, we'll get all kinds of pushback for that. So trying to put out $1 million for something to vote, and that's just egregious to me. And it also kind of seems like you're desperate to at the point to where you want to offer $1 million, which is not pocket change whatsoever, to get people to vote. It's just kind of crazy in my opinion.
Crazy and illegal.
Very, very much so illegal. Very much so illegal.
Anything else from anybody? Hopefully, things will calm down. I don't think so, but I can be hopeful.
Yes.
Well, if I may, before we close, I do want to make sure people have as much information they can to get their voting plan together for Election Day. There are ways that you can check your voting information to find where your polling location is, so you can just build out your plan for Election Day. If you need to find out where your polling location is, and also still making sure that you're still an active registered voter, go to alabamavotes.gov. That's a good way to just put in your information. All you gotta do is put in your name, your birthday, and it will pull up your information. If you need rides to the poll, we have a system that we're doing in the River Region area, and we're also connecting to other areas across the state. We do have a toll-free number if you need free rides, and that number is 866-4ALVOTE. 866 for AL votes. And then also, if you go to the polling location and you see any kind of voter intimidation practices happening, there's no accessibility at that polling location. If you have mobility issues, your polling location isn't open. We do have an election protection hotline that's available too. That's 866 our vote. Also, last, I know I'm putting a lot of information out here. If you still need to like find information about your ballots, what's going to be on your ballots, need more information on candidates, go to defendourballot.org. That's a one-stop resource to check your information, find out about candidates, find out about the amendments on your upcoming ballots and things like that.
And Kynesha, I do have one question, something that was posted on social media I just didn't ask you about. I've heard that if the people working at the voting polls, if someone writes on the ballot before they hand it to you, that basically invalidates your ballot.
No.
So is that any truth to that?
No. So Alabama, speaking specifically in Alabama does have straight ticket voting, meaning that you scribble in for the Democratic Party or scribble in for the Republican Party. It will select all those candidates on the Democratic side or the Republican side. Now, let's say, for example, and I'm just using this as an example, don't look at me crazy, Mr. Goff.
Right.
But let's say if you select straight ticket Democratic Party, but you want to vote for Donald Trump as president, you can still select straight Democratic ticket option and bubble in Donald Trump. That vote will still go to Donald Trump and the rest of your Democratic candidate. It would not spoil the ballot. Or if you have an independent candidate that you want to vote for a certain position, you can still select straight Democratic ticket or straight Republican ticket and then select that independent candidate for race. Now, if there is a case where you have a write-in candidate, like for example, Montgomery has a write-in campaign going on right now.
Right.
If you select straight Republican or straight Democrat and you want to write a candidate in, you can do that. That will not spoil the ballot.
But if a poll worker writes something at the top of the ballot before they hand it to you, does that anyway invalidate?
Don't accept that ballot. Don't
Okay,
accept that.
that's
ballot.
what I thought. Okay, so if anyone writes on that ballot before they hand it to you, do not accept it.
Do not
ask for a
accept
new
it.
ballot.
Ask for a new ballot.
And also, I want to remind people to please check to make sure your driver's license are updated before you go to the polls, because I saw that yesterday that someone was reminding them they tried to go early vote and had not checked their driver's license and found out that it was not updated. So they had to go get their driver's license renewed and then go back to the polls. So those of us who are not in Alabama, we don't do early voting. So, you get to the poll next Tuesday morning, pull out your driver's license as your ID. It's not valid. They will not accept it. They will not let you vote. So please go check your driver's license, make sure they're up to date before you go to the polls.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Well, I've already voted, so I did mail in.
Good.
Voted 2 or 3 weeks ago, so
Good job.
I'm good.
Very good.
And I, Kynesha, we appreciate it. We appreciate you just coming with the information.
Yes.
And I do think, and you're very nonpartisan. You try to keep it balanced, and that's great. We talk about Democrats and Republicans, and nobody is. I don't think any group is all good or any group is all bad. There are. You talk about the MAGA group. Well, that's not all Republicans.
No,
that's a group of people that wants to follow one man.
It's almost like there's a 3-party system already in place. And
What I would be interested in too, and I think that question about the television commercials were good, because there's one of them about Ms. Harris and that she's gonna have boys playing against girls and all that there's stuff that just,
Mhm.
The one that your kid's going to go to school, as a boy and come home as a girl or something,
Mhm.
that one's outlandish. I mean,
Yeah.
again, some of the things that they're saying in these commercials are,
Mhm.
if you're educated, you have to know that they cannot be true.
but I
Right.
go back to the comment, the comment Kynesha made, and I'll keep this. The message gets translated differently.
Differently.
Mhm.
You're right.
They know who will receive that message and
Mhm.
who will receive it in a certain way
Right.
that will spur them to move in a certain direction.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I just want to ask, and this is not related to this election, but how can a man live in Florida and be a senator in Alabama? How can that happen? And nobody says anything.
If I could solve the world's problems like that, I'd be a rich woman. I'll say that.
Well,
and
I
Tom,
think-
the word serve is questionable. Okay.
Uh-huh.
well, that's
Uh-huh.
true.
But what I've learned too, some people, they may live in Florida, all they need is a residence or
Yeah.
something in their name in the state of Alabama, and they run with it. So
I'll bet you if Michael
Uh-huh.
Walker was a senator and he lived in Florida and he was a senator in Alabama, they would be raising all kinds
eat
of
them
heads.
up. They will eat them up.
Yes.
They will eat
Tom,
'em
I
up.
was going to suggest that you might run from for Congress from Florida, but run in Alabama. You win probably,
Yeah.
but they give you a hard time.
Yeah.
No,
You have that good old Auburn support, I know.
Exactly.
I just can't believe that the state allows that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's a good question that should be brought up in the next election cycle, because
Yeah.
that seat will be up for election, and those are
Yes.
questions that voters should ask. You don't want anyone to represent you that does not live in your community.
Right.
Be it that if it's a statewide seat or a local seat, you want to make sure people who are closest to your issues are best the ones to represent you. So those are questions that should definitely come up in the next election cycle.
Kynesha, you
Go
sound
ahead.
like integrity and ethics should be a part of it.
Yeah.
That's me being optimistic all the time. I'm always an optimist in things like that. I'm like, what people, just do what they're supposed to do, it's gonna be fine. But we know in politics that's not always the case. But I feel like my goal in terms of civic engagement, when you arm people, and I say arm, let me say a better word, when you equip voters with the information that they need to make elected officials and candidates accountable, and make them answer the right questions, I think people can kind of see through the BS that they try to tell them. Like, I just talked about next year will be municipal elections in a lot of areas in Alabama. You don't need a city council person or a candidate for city council coming to you that they're going to stop the laws regarding abortion. That's not their role as a city council person. The city council person can help with budgeting for the city, for sanitation and things like that, but they can't do anything about abortion. They can't do anything about the Supreme Court, and they would try that. They would go back to what we were talking about, messaging being translated different. They know people get riled up about IVF and abortion, so they'll try to do those messaging points to talk about that. But if you have that person that's in that crowd at that candidate forum, like say, hey, Mr. Man, that's not what you do with city council. What are you going to do on the city council level? That brings that accountability and that integrity that I want so much, that I know Mr. Walker don't see, but I try to hope that people have it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Anybody got anything else? Well, we hope that the election is free and fair.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Thank you all so much. All right. Thank you, Kynesha.
Thank you. Y'all have a good one, and we'll
too.
talk
Roll
after
with
the
the
election.
polls.
Yes. Roll into the polls.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. My closing comment for today, or as I see it, is we're coming to the end of October and rolling into the holiday season. From here on in throughout the rest of 2024, we will continue to close out our doings for the rest of the year. And we hope to enjoy each other, enjoy our families, give and receive gifts, and probably will eat too much. But let's remember to give thanks for the many blessings we have been given in our lives. And enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. And that's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. I want to thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thanks again to the TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this October the 29th. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. If you've got an extra one, give one to someone else today. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe.